Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Joe Tyrrell, and welcome back to the Runoff, the GP Blog podcast. It's been a misery compiling weekend for Charles Leclerc. He crashed out from the lead of the race, gifting Max Verstappen a victory in France, with Mercedes fighting hard for second and third. We'll dissect the race around Paul Ricard, and we'll look ahead to the upcoming Hungarian Grand Prix. This is the 2022 season, episode 12, and we're finally, hopefully, if you're watching this on YouTube, in video. Cameron, Toby, welcome. It's sort of a new era here at GP Blog, the Runoff. How are you both?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you doing?
I won't lie. I look awful, as you can probably tell, but I have been out. It is my birthday this week. So I've been out last night. So I'm a little bit hungover, but I'm surviving. And I've watched the race, and it wasn't awful at Paul Ricard as I normally expect. Toby, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all good. Thank you, Joe. Nice to see your hair's looking really good and well prepared for this podcast.
Yes, I apologise for looking at an absolute state, but sometimes you've got to do what you've got to do. And I have been out on a pretty heavy night, but I have had a chance to watch the French Grand Prix. And lads, I have been very vocal about the French Grand Prix being boring, being a boring track, being awful. However, last year proved me wrong, and this year was more of the same. It was a pretty entertaining race.
Yeah, I think it wasn't as dull as we thought it would be. There was really good moments, but I will admit, in my opinion, the kind of middle sector of the race was a bit dry. There wasn't really too much going on. Mainly just Carlos Sainz kind of picking his way through the back markers on the midfield. But I think overall, everyone will probably be quite happy with what they've seen today. It was a good race. It was drama. It was good to see Carlos Sainz coming right from the back, getting right up to the top. So for me, there's no complaints. And I think overall, like I said, just quite a fun and good race to watch.
Are you in agreement, Cam?
Yeah, I think I am. I think I saw a stat online the other day that the French Grand Prix actually has quite a lot of overtakes and is one of the circuits on the 2022 calendar that has more overtakes than not. And I think we showed that. I think, and again, it was a good race. Like you mentioned, last year was a pretty good race. I think we can all agree that. And I think it was the same this time around as well. A lot of overtaking obviously helped, I think, by Carlos Sainz having to come through the back, like Toby said. But drama at the front, drama for the podium, even at the points in that last turn where Seb Vettel and Lance almost had contact or maybe had contact, like there was something happening all over the grid. And I think that was really encouraging. And obviously there's been rumours that Paul Ricard won't be renewed. And I think the last couple of years have showed that it has potential to be a really good race on the calendar.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it will be here next season. It looks like Formula One might favour a trip to Kyalami or, well, Las Vegas, as we already know. But that's a story for another video or another podcast. We're focusing on the French Grand Prix. And I must say, I completely agree with a couple of the points you both made there. I thought the race was a really entertaining one. The middle part, Toby, as you said, was pretty meh. But I thought that in particular, the battle between Russell and Perez was a really good one. And it was an important one for Mercedes because it meant that it shows that they can mix it with Red Bull, even though Perez had a poor weekend.
Yeah, the restart from George after the virtual safety car was a really good use of mind play and tactics. I think it almost caught everyone off guard because we could see what he was trying to do, and then it actually just happened so quickly, and the gap he built was enough to obviously hold on to get the podium. But yeah, I think Mercedes are going to be happy. Like second and third, a double podium, their first of the season. If they come out of this weekend with the only issue that they might see is that their speed is lacking. But I think overall, you can't really take that away from the fact that they've got a double podium and they have to be celebrating this weekend.
Yeah, I think that what you mentioned there about George and the virtual safety car restart was a really good point because I kind of thought he might have a problem or something. Like he's going so slow after the chicane. And I thought, oh, what's up here? I was a bit concerned. And then, yeah, it's something you don't really see too often, like tactics like that. You obviously see from safety car restarts, backing up the pack properly like that and try to get an edge. But you don't really see tactics like that all too often. I think it was refreshing to see. And like fair play, because I mean Mercedes don't really have the pace of Red Bull. Perez obviously wasn't really on a good weekend at all, like had no pace. And George, yeah, did something you kind of have to do to get third place. And I have to say, like, fair play to George. Like he's basically got that podium through tactics rather than pace, really. And I have to say that's like really impressive because he's gained an edge that you don't normally expect to see in Formula One.
Yeah, it did look like for a little while that Russell would miss out to Perez, but ultimately Perez just didn't have enough grip. He made a couple of mistakes, and George Russell made full use of it. And fair play to him. Really positive result. We can't not talk about the race winners, Red Bull, Max Verstappen. At this point, it just feels inevitable with Ferrari and Charles Leclerc, doesn't it?
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere. Like I was just looking away. I was on my phone checking something. I looked back and he's in the wall, and I was really confused. And then from that point onwards, it was so easy for oh my gosh, so easy for Verstappen. He just had the most comfortable race I think you could possibly have. He was out the front by 10 seconds, just chilling basically. So I think Red Bull are going to be extremely happy. But once again, it seems just like Ferrari just. We thought that they could at the start of the season. We thought that they could be there with battling with Red Bull, but it's just small things each week that are costing them majorly.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing's like Mercedes are picking up points, like they're closing up that gap in the constructors, which is something that Ferrari wouldn't really have been thinking about when basically at the start of the season when they were just right at the top, clearly had the most pace. But yeah, Leclerc said it in his interview after the incident. He just said, "Yeah, it's a mistake from me," and he was saying how he's had like the best form of his life, but it doesn't matter if he keeps making silly mistakes like he did at Imola. And he's spot on. So fair play for him for being so honest because he knows what he did wrong, and he's man enough to say that if he loses the championship by 32 points, is what he said. He knows why. And yeah, there's nothing much more to say other than the fact that Leclerc knows exactly what he did wrong. And yeah, it's really frustrating. I think it's now 3 retirements from the lead. Leclerc this year, and this one is his fault, really. I mean, there was talk about like a throttle issue, but I think he's kind of accepted that it was probably his mistake. And yeah, that's a shame because he looked like he had the pace. Like Verstappen clearly had the straight line speed, and I came into the race expecting it to just be a really easy overtake using DRS, just into the chicane for Verstappen. But he got close a lot of times, but was never able to actually make an overtake. And it looked like Leclerc had sort of pulled away a little bit, but when the actual incident happened, and then yeah, in the wall, no points, and Verstappen storms to another win.
Yeah, it never looked like Verstappen got into top gear really. Like he just could cruise along. I remember tuning in, I think I missed the first few laps, but the 20th lap, I think around, the gap wasn't massive between him and Hamilton. And then all of a sudden he just kept gradually building that lead. And he was clear, he was never under any pressure. And so it's really frustrating to see more issues stopping us get the title fight we want, because it's up to something like 64 points now.
Yeah, it's a big old gap now.
It's a big old gap, and it's a huge ask for Charles Leclerc to overturn that. And for Ferrari, they need to start worrying about Mercedes, don't they, Toby? Because they're not far behind in the constructors. Not after today.
No, I think the gap's at like 40 points or something around that. It's
a couple of good and bad weekends for either team, and it changes completely.
Yeah, I was reading yesterday that James Vowles thinks that Mercedes in 2 or 3 races will be back to fighting with the top 2. So we've seen at the start of the season, Red Bull and Ferrari have really found that development early on, whilst Mercedes have been slowly just creeping it back and are taking longer to learn, but are getting there. And I think with the amount of retires from Ferrari and how often they seem to have a problem, it wouldn't even surprise me if Mercedes were only 20 points, or they've half that deficit maybe next weekend. I know that's probably quite a bit of a push, but say Charles Leclerc gets another DNF and Carlos Sainz can only best 5th, for an example, and Hamilton and Russell are still doing so well. If this continues, even for the next 2 races, then that deficit is going to be very, very small, and Ferrari probably really need to start worrying about Mercedes now more so than Red Bull, because I think the gap to the top is going to be too big for them to catch.
Yeah, Mercedes, just the issue is qualifying, it seems. It seems like their Sunday pace is actually pretty decent. Obviously, it's still a little way off, as you saw from the gap that Hamilton sort of had to Verstappen at the front. Obviously, it was quite small to start with, and then Verstappen sort of managed to pull that out. There was an occasion, it looked like Hamilton might be able to fight him, but it was never really going to happen. But yeah, that Saturday pace, they're just a little way off, especially just in terms of maybe getting a front row start that then means you can fight for the lead of the race, and then the ball's in your court. Whereas starting where they were, obviously Hamilton had a great start here at France, getting Perez off the line, but it's still a worry that for them anyway, they'll know that qualifying is something to improve upon, because I think that fourth was the best start Hamilton's had this year, and yet he's had 4 podiums in a row. So they've clearly got some race pace.
Yeah, as I said, their race pace has been there for weeks now, and it's just that qualifying pace doesn't seem to be there. They seem to struggle Friday, Saturday, and then come alive on the Sunday. They obviously
Friday, especially like practice sessions, they are quite a way off. Like they're in the midfield completely in practice.
And I remember looking on the BBC app, looking at the headline, and it was sort of Mercedes scrape through Q2, and it was like they're just really not getting that Saturday pace and Friday pace, which is fair enough, because at the minute they're doing the best they can on a Sunday and they're getting some really good results. So Mercedes will be quite pleased that they're making this progress, and hopefully they can sort that out. And we'll see. The freeway title, we've been not arguing, but discussing for weeks now, because that's what we want to see. That's what I want to see. I want to see Hamilton and Verstappen going at it with these new cars. We were denied that this week. Maybe Hungary, who knows? Maybe after the summer break. That's probably the crucial period for them. After the summer break, see if they can get back to challenging for wins. That's what we want to see. Yeah, we'll get on to our winners and losers now, lads. Toby, I'll start with you. Your first winner this week.
Yeah, I seem to always do this, but I'm going to just keep it short and sweet, because my winners are Mercedes. I know I mentioned it then. They've got their first double podium of the season. They're only going to come away from this weekend with happiness. I think if they are coming away, like I said, if they're going to come away with anything negative, it's just going to be that they're lacking a bit of pace. I think Lewis Hamilton probably had one of his best drives of the season, just comfortably, just sitting in P2. He had a bit of a issue coming out of turn 2, I believe, at one stage where he just ran off a bit and had a small wiggle, basically. But apart from that, he seemed to have a pretty perfect race. And then obviously George Russell was just mega when it came to having to overtake Perez. No bias there at all, I promise. But yeah, I think
chicane.
No, George Russell, elite world champion next season. But yeah, I think Mercedes is just going to be happy. So they're my winners for this week.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I don't think you can argue with Mercedes as a winner, double podium, can you, Cam?
No, not at all. I think Hamilton's radio at the end of the race is pretty telling, because if you'd had any other season in the last few years where Hamilton finished second, you would not be hearing him celebrating like he'd won a win, which is pretty much what he did. He was just there. You could tell he was really happy with where the car was, congratulating George and getting third. So they know where they're at, and they know they're making improvements, which is good to see that Hamilton and George, they're both buying into sort of trying to improve the car so much, because they're at a deficit, but they're making strides, and the drivers aren't sort of just putting their heads down. Hamilton could quite easily just be like, oh, I'm not fighting for wins anymore. I just can't be bothered. But he's not being like that, and, he's pushing the team forward. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Mercedes do make strides each race, just progressively get better. Hungary is a track that Hamilton's really good at. I'm not sure if that means that he's going to be close to fighting for a win this year, just because he's good at the track. The car, isn't going to be much different. But yeah, like when the summer break comes, that's a time to sort of think things over a little bit. And yeah, they could easily come back from the summer break competing for a win. And I think that would be great progress. I mean, they're not going to win the Drivers' Championship or the Constructors this year, but they could quite easily pick up a few wins and be in a good place for next year.
Yeah, it's all about making progress this year and probably focusing on next year for Mercedes. So yeah, we look forward to seeing them back at the front. But Cam, sticking with you, who's your winner?
Well, I could talk about Max Verstappen, but I don't really want to because I feel like he's so far ahead in the championship. It's obvious that he's a huge winner. I just want to talk about Alpine, touch on them, because I think they had a really strong weekend. Ocon at his home race and Fernando again being pretty mega. If you watched our half-season driver rankings, you'll know we ranked Alonso a little low, just because the results haven't quite been there from him. Obviously, a lot of the time it hasn't been his fault, because his driving has been pretty spectacular. And again, it was here, finishing sixth. Obviously, it was miles off the drivers ahead of him, but was clearly the top of the midfield. And then Ocon, again, getting results, obviously lost a few points out to his teammate, but Ocon's been really consistent, I think, this year, a step up, and is proving why Alpine tied him down to that long-term contract last year. And it's big for them because fourth is their fight in the constructors with McLaren, and they gain points on them. Obviously, Ricciardo finished down in ninth, Lando in seventh, and Alpine were just one place higher than each McLaren. So I think it's a good weekend for them because they were tied on points going into this, and now they've got an advantage. So yeah, fourth is now theirs to lose, and they look like they potentially do have a quicker car than McLaren, even though, and the positive thing for Alpine is that McLaren bought updates this weekend as well. So even with the updates, McLaren weren't able to get a better result, which is a good thing for Alpine going forward.
Toby, I do have to ask you, what were your thoughts on Cam's Fernando Alonso rating in his video? You edited it.
I
asked you about the ranking.
Yeah, no, I agreed. I mean,
F1's a points based sport. Like, obviously,
if you don't get the points, you're not performing well.
Yeah, like ultimately, like you could be driving really well, but it doesn't really matter unless you're actually getting points. So that's what I based it on anyway.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. Yeah. Your losers now, Cam, please.
My loser this week is Ferrari, because we can't really get away from it. They had a poor weekend from what they could have done. Obviously, Sainz took the engine penalty and came through the field really well. One drive of the day, made a bunch of overtakes and had a really good drive, but the strategy was poor from Sainz's perspective. The question still does remain.
A really bizarre call, I thought.
Yeah,
they had the 5-second penalty, but surely he would have got 5 seconds up on the others.
Yeah, you'd think so. The only question remains is, could those medium tires have made it to the end? They must have been looking at the data. I know we can banter Ferrari's strategy forever, but there must have been something on the data that suggests the mediums couldn't go to the end, and you'd have a scenario like Hamilton in 2020, or was it 2021, when his tire at Silverstone was just like going like that. And
2020.
Yeah, and you have a scenario like that with like 5 laps from the end, and you're like, well, we've got no points now. So from their point of view, they were probably just doing damage limitation. Let's get fifth and the fastest lap. Whereas we obviously were thinking, well, he could easily have had like second or third and got a podium. But there is a chance that his tires could have gone, because it would have been a really long time to go on the mediums, because obviously he pitted for them from the safety car that Leclerc crashed. Obviously, there's a chance. I'm still thinking they potentially didn't have to pit him then, because he started on the hards because he was right at the back. And what was it, 18 or 19 laps in when Leclerc crashed? And you think that's not very long. You don't really maximize the hards there. And they could have saved themselves a 2-stop if they just went long on the hards and then pitted for the mediums later. And I know you've got a safety car then, you kind of think you have to pit, but there's potential that they could have just pitted later on the hards onto the mediums and saved themselves a stop. Obviously, they would have saved themselves a stop under safety car, so they saved themselves 16 seconds or whatever, but that could have been a difference. And yeah, so the first point is they kind of messed up the strategy in terms of Sainz not getting a podium. And then Leclerc, obviously, it's not Ferrari's fault that Leclerc made a mistake, but they're in leading the race, and yet again they've been leading a race and haven't won the race, and they've retired. So you can't really put anything other than a loser Ferrari, because they've lost more ground to Red Bull, they've lost ground to Mercedes, and they'll be looking behind them now rather than in front, I think.
Yeah, I have to ask the question: is Ferrari's fight still for the title, or is it now with Mercedes for second in the constructors?
I think the title fight's gone.
I don't. I think
Are
they're
are they far better than Mercedes in terms of their performance?
they're better than Mercedes, and they're level with Red Bull in terms of performance, but they're not in terms of reliability. And they're far better than Mercedes in terms of performance, but Mercedes is just reliable. Like Mercedes just always finish like in the top four, at least with one driver, like pretty much like every single week. And I wouldn't say the title fight's over. I think the constructors fight's over, but I think Leclerc still has hope in the drivers. But again, it's like the gap's so big that we don't know what updates are going to be brought. We don't know scenarios, but yeah, the gap is huge now because Verstappen's not really a driver that you can imagine. If he finishes the race, you can't really imagine him finishing lower than second. Like I can't really even imagine like Perez or Sainz beating him just based on like pace. So unless he has issues or there's a crash or something, like Verstappen isn't going to finish even third based on pace. So in that respect, maybe the title is gone, but you never know with F1. Like, I don't know, something crazy could happen where you get like an Ocon at Brazil on Verstappen where he's trying to unlap himself and there's contact and that happens like twice and then Leclerc's back in or something. I don't know.
Just quickly looking at the points difference, obviously it's 63. Say Verstappen and Leclerc finish every single race from now on. They neither of them retire.
That's not happening, but yeah.
Leclerc has to win every single race.
Is that what? And if Verstappen finishes second, Leclerc will win the title.
Yeah. So there's the points difference is 63.
Yeah.
There's 10 races left.
Mm-hmm.
And there's obviously a 7 points difference between the winner and runner up.
Yeah.
So say Leclerc wins the next 9 and Verstappen finishes second and neither of them get the fastest lap. Yeah. I know it's not going to happen. They'd be tied.
Wow. That is some quick maths from you.
I wasn't expecting that. I couldn't have done that.
I think at least I may be wrong.
Current capacity.
Someone may like call me out, but I think I'm right.
I can see a scenario in which Verstappen's got the title wrapped up before Brazil.
Yeah, wouldn't be shocked. He is just that far clear at the minute. But who knows? In the world of Formula One over the last 2-3 years, it's never over until it's over. Toby, please, your loser.
I've gone with AlphaTauri. There's not really too much to say apart from that. I think Yuki Tsunoda got damage.
That was not his fault at all, to be fair.
It's not his fault, but
just completely spun him round at the chicane.
But he got damaged, so he had to retire. And then Pierre Gasly's just had a bit of a disappointing weekend at his home race.
Yeah, it was really bad, wasn't
it? So I think I'm not going to say much more. Sorry that I'm not talking much on it,
fine.
But there isn't really too much to say. I think they're just Pierre. Like obviously, Ocon's got points at his home race, and Pierre Gasly would obviously be hoping for the same. But his weekend has just been very, very odd.
They're very hot or cold at the minute, AlphaTauri, aren't they? Like
mostly 1 week,
cold. 1 week they seem to get a good result, and then the next, they're not. They
look good, to be fair, because Tsunoda obviously started 8th, so it looked like they were on for a pretty decent result. But to be fair,
I'm not saying that Tsunoda damage is his fault at all, but obviously he had to retire, so they haven't gained anything from it.
No, it's just like they looked like they could get points, which hasn't been the case often. Like it's weird, to be fair, because in the race that you wouldn't say many teams or drivers had like a really bad race. Like I'd say Perez had a bad race, and then maybe Alfa Romeo had a pretty poor race. Plus Haas, to be fair, Haas actually is an honourable mention because they went for the alternate strategy to try to put Magnussen and Schumacher in clean air on the hard tyres. And about like 10 laps later, Leclerc crashed. Everyone pitted and we're ahead of them. Like Magnussen was like looking good for like points. I think he pitted when he was 11th or 12th or something, and then was just putting in good laps in clean air and made up loads of time. And then everyone just got a free pit stop, and yeah, that was their race done. So
that's what happens though.
I know, but like that, they went for something different and it didn't pay off. So yeah, a bit unlucky, to be fair.
Yeah, AlphaTauri, you're Toby's loser this week. My loser is me because I'm hungover and I've been punched in the face. I feel pretty awful, but I did enjoy the race. So I think in general, a winner from me this week is the French Grand Prix. I think if it is its farewell, I think fair play. They've gone out on a high. If not, it was a pretty good audition to keep it on the circuit, on the calendar. So fair play, Paul Ricard. I'm certainly not your biggest fan, but you've done all right this weekend. Lads, we'll move on to the Hungarian Grand Prix now, as well as our predictions for next week and where we stand in the predicting championship. Hungary. What happened last year at Hungary?
Ocon.
Oh, Ocon won.
Unreal. When Alonso was just like an absolute king defending from Hamilton. Unbelievable.
That was
Vettel
well
almost
weird.
But then he got the time penalty because he had the lack of fuel or whatever.
He got disqualified.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, he was disqualified. It wasn't even just time penalty.
I'd have loved Vettel to win that, but Ocon winning it wasn't bad. Yeah, that was massive in the title race as well.
It was when Bottas decided to go bowling.
Yeah, he took out Lando Norris, who then took out
Verstappen. Well, Verstappen had damage and
took out Perez as well, didn't he?
Yeah, literally. It was like a similar race would be unreal. That was like one of the races of the season.
Yeah, we wouldn't be complaining if we got another one of those.
And that was Latifi and Russell's first points.
And Latifi beat Russell, didn't he? And it was
Latifi
when
was 8th and got 4 points, and Russell was 10th and got 1, I believe.
Yeah, I think he was 9th.
Did they both get promoted because of Vettel's?
No, they were both in the points anyway.
Yeah, and then so that means
one went up.
Must have got P8.
Yeah, I think Latifi got 7th and Russell got 8th, if I'm correctly, but that might be wrong. Toby's checking now.
I'm having a look.
Have a quick look for us, Toby. Find out.
Just keep talking amongst yourself.
But I think Hungary's a good track. Just on it, I think Hungary's a really good track. I like Hungary.
I have said in the past, I'll admit.
So it was.
Oh,
sorry.
No, don't go. You go, Toby.
It was Latifi 8th and Russell 9th, but then Latifi got promoted to 7th and Russell went up to 8th.
Mm-hmm.
So a 10-point haul for Williams.
Wow. What I do
no points
have that happen again
for a year and a half or whatever it was.
And Kimi even got a point.
Wow. Max got 9th, did he?
Max got 9th.
Yeah, with damage, yeah.
AlphaTauri 5th and 6th.
Yeah, that was Yuki's one of the best results other than...
And fastest lap.
Yuki got fastest lap?
No, Pierre.
Oh.
Sorry.
Wow.
I have gone on record in the past of saying that, maybe not on this podcast, but that I think Hungary is a little bit overrated. But I do think it is a good track. I just don't think it's as good as people make out. But I still think it is a good track. And I
think it's a little, I think it's pretty decent. We had a few. I think recency bias is probably playing in because not only was the race good, but there was just so many cool battles all over. Like you had like Schumacher defending from Verstappen, like, and that was cool.
Yeah,
like with that hat, I know Verstappen had loads of damage, but like Schumacher like held him off for like quite a few laps. It was quite cool.
I think it'll be a lot of fun next weekend. I'm confident of that. So, should we go on to our predictions?
Let's do it.
So, do you want to update us, Cam, whereabouts we are?
Of course, yes. So, predicting the French Grand Prix went well for one of us, and that was Mr. Toby McCluskey. So, he got 2 wrong. He got Max pole and Hamilton win wrong. He also predicted there'd be rain. So, that couldn't be further from the truth.
Was that the surprise? Oh, yeah, no, he just predicted there'd be rain.
Yeah, he just predicted rain.
What is the weather at Paul Ricard today?
It was just completely sunny at like 35 degrees. So yeah, track temp was at 60. So yeah, it was very hot.
It's currently 28 degrees over there.
It's still now as well.
I mean, it's raining here, so I was like close enough.
Bit grayer, bit cloudy, bit windy.
Yeah, but anyway, the one thing that Toby did do well was he predicted his surprise prediction, which gets you 3 points. He predicted 2 Mercedes in the top 4, and obviously there was 2 Mercedes in the top 3, so even had room to spare. So yeah, Toby moves up to 7 points overall with that, and that takes him into the lead. Because Joe, you didn't get a single one right. You were winning.
What did I predict? I know. Was it Vettel top 7?
Yeah. So your surprise was that Sebastian Vettel would finish in the top 7. You predicted that Max Verstappen would qualify on pole, and you predicted that Sergio Perez would win. So none of them correct. And myself, the one I got right was that Charles Leclerc would get pole position, and I thought he'd win the race, which he would have done if he hadn't just completely messed up. And I didn't think Verstappen would finish in the top 4 because I thought Red Bull would have loads of degradation, and that didn't come true. So scores on the doors: Toby's top with 7, Joe's second with 5, and I'm last with 4.
Cool. Toby needs pulling back in. He's got a little bit of breathing space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not happy about that. So, Toby, we'll start with you in that case. You can go first. Make your prediction.
No. Right. So I think there's going to be a bit of rain in Hungary.
So just pick something. Go.
So, pole position is going to be Max Verstappen.
Mm-hmm.
The winner is going to be George Russell. And the surprise is going to be a Lando Norris podium.
I like it. Joe, do you want to go before me?
Yeah, hold on. I am just checking what the weather is like in Mogorod, which is where the Hungaroring is, next Sunday.
Strong knowledge. I didn't know that.
Oh,
it's in
hang
Budapest.
on. I just searched where the Hungaroring is. It says it's in Mogorod. We, lads, could be in for a bit of excitement next week. There is a thunderstorm planned for Saturday.
Wet quali.
I want it on Sunday.
You can't change your predictions now, Toby.
It's raining Sunday as well. For an hour at 3 o'clock.
That'll probably be on the races, to be fair.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you can see that, but that is Saturday.
Fairs.
Now that makes
Interesting.
things interesting.
I would like to see that.
But Mercedes aren't good in qualifying. So we're going for Charles Leclerc pole position. We're going for a George Russell victory.
Why did you both predict George to win?
Just copying me.
Wait, is it? I just forgot. I'll go Lewis then.
Okay.
I'll go Lewis. Lewis Hamilton victory.
Blind faith Mercedes yet again from you two.
And the surprise will be Williams top 8.
Bold. Well, it's going to be Albon, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say that'll be
no
Albon
way it's
then.
Latifi.
Yes,
But
Alex Albon. But Williams.
He got it last year. It might be his circuit.
Lucky track. I'm going with that. Cam, what are you going with?
Right, I'll say pole will be Leclerc because Ferrari qualify well. Win. I'm just going to be boring. Max is going to win. I want to get points. And surprise would be that Alonso is in the top 5. Does that count, or do I need to go top 4?
Yeah, top 5's fair.
Toby's questioning it.
I think top
Toby,
5's
do you want me to change the top 4?
Do you know what? You can have top 5.
I think top 5's fair.
I mean,
That still requires
what, 6th today?
Yeah, and that was okay.
Really, that
I'll go
requires
top
one
4.
of the
He's in the top 4. Okay,
All
I'll
right.
go top 4. Alonso's in the top 4.
All right. I feel like Toby is out for revenge when it comes to
Yeah, just because that Ricciardo shout.
Right, now
we're even. Are we?
We're all even now.
Yeah,
because I made
right.
Joe change his last week, and now you're.
Okay, cool.
Wow,
My grudge is gone.
I don't think it made a difference whether we changed mine.
No, it didn't.
But
Vettel finished 11th. Not so.
yeah, well. Anyway, lads, I think that's all we've got time for this week. Thank you for joining me on what I don't know if it will be or if it won't be our first ever video podcast here on the GP Blog YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Just a quick one. Sadly, I'm not here next week. Just putting that in now.
You will hopefully hear from Toby though, won't you?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So yeah, fingers crossed. Me and Cam will be back next week for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Toby, you'll hear from him next week, but he won't be here, and I'll catch you next time.
Michael,